was an undertaker for about a year. You got to see a side of life that most people don't ever see. It's a very humbling experience, and it grounds you very much. It does one of two things. It either forces you to like face your mortality and go, oh my God, this ain't for me, I need to go get a job in Starbucks. Or it makes you reflect on the value of what life really is.
Leroy Kincaide, who went from an undertaker, writer and director, to a professional wrestler with a heavyweight championship. What do you think about that, about knowing if you had a certain amount of time left? Would you want to know?
I'm very much like,
Glad you can make it. Really good to have you here. Interested to know, taking it all the way back, where did you grow up? If you could describe your childhood in a couple of words, how would you describe it?
childhood was interesting. I grew up in my younger years in Peckham. Lived around Peckham Park Road, just off the Old Kent Road. Grew up around there to the age of like 11. Probably was a little tearaway, I'm not going to lie. Used to run around creating, all sorts of chaos, as you did when you was a youngster. Had a lot of fond memories from that time, but I also remember looking forward to the weekend because I would always stay with my nan and granddad on the weekends. So,
okay. And where were they, in London as well?
No, they were in Kent.
Okay.
So I would sort of have part of my life between London and Kent, but I spent all of my summer holidays, all of any holidays, always up in Kent.
Okay.
So I have very fond memories of that portion of my life.
Yeah.
And then moved out of London when I was 11 and grew up, rest of my days down there.
Okay.
In Kent.
And what did you enjoy doing? What were you good at?
So as a little one, I was very interested in martial arts. Like I think martial arts was the thing that got me. Like I was watching, like Jackie Chan movies. We had this old video man that used to come around down in Kent. He used to come around like every week, and we'd get like these old Hong Kong, action films from him, like £1 a week, £2 a week. So I remember watching these, and I was very heavily influenced by like some of the old Hong Kong cinema. So I think the first thing I remember getting myself into was like Taekwondo when I was like 7. I think I was about 7 years old. Mm-hmm. So I was doing some Taekwondo, was never any good at it. But I did continue doing a lot of exercise outside of like school hours. Like when I went to secondary school, when I was able to sort of decide, well, what do I want to try? Because, from what you mentioned earlier on, I wasn't academically great at school. So I found myself just naturally excelling at like physical stuff. So I was always interested in just picking something up and just doing it rather than just sitting down and trying to theorize it, which is really weird because now everything for me as a writer and director is about the theory first before you get to the show. So it's interesting.
And tell me about, we'll definitely get to the writing and directing, but tell me a little bit about your first job. I believe it was an undertaker.
Well, first job, like proper ever job?
Yeah.
Okay, so my first proper ever job, I was like 14. I was working in a jean shop,
Okay.
I had my first work experience there. GB's it was called. It's a shop in Maidstone. So there's like all these guys in there that were from London. So I had like a natural rapport from before, growing up in Peckham. But these guys like used to listen to like old garage mixtapes, like Sun City and stuff. So being in this shop was like, it was like an iconic shop of Maidstone back in the days. So for anybody that watches this, that's from Maidstone, that knows of like, 90s, sort of early 2000s, they'd know this shop, GB's.
Okay.
So I worked there. That was really, really bloody awesome. Got my little first pay packet for like 400 quid. Thought I was a multi-millionaire at that point. I was like, yes, never had this much in my life. At like 14, I think.
Yeah.
So that was my first job. I've done a load of jobs. Not going to lie, a whole multitude of different things that I've worked in. Been in a banking cashier centre, working with like the cash deposits that come into like NatWest and stuff.
Yeah.
So they have like little dispensaries like in certain parts of the country, and I've worked in there. But probably the most prevalent thing that stuck with me throughout my life probably was when I was an undertaker.
Yeah.
So at the age of 17, I was an undertaker for about a year. Very interesting job.
I bet.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
You got to see a side of life that most people don't ever see.
And we'll never see.
Yeah, it's a very humbling experience, you know, and it grounds you very much. It does one of two things. It either forces you to like face your mortality and go, oh my God, this ain't for me. I need to go get a job in Starbucks. Or something. Do you know what I mean? Like just get anything normal. Or it makes you reflect on the value of what life really is and the time that we've got, because it's very fragile and we don't have a lot of it.
Yeah.
So we spend it like we've got an infinite amount of time, but the reality is that, you know, for everybody it's limited. So from a very, very, very young age, I got this weird experience of perspective that not a lot of people get. So I feel very blessed to have had this experience. But one of the things that ultimately made me get out of that job, because I needed to do what I was just said a second ago, like go and work somewhere simple without any sort of form of being around it, was that I'd become so desensitized to death that it was weird.
Really?
And I felt that fear should be installed in us somewhere, because if we lose fear of death, I'm not saying like, you know, to go morbid on it, but if you lose fear of that at such a young age, I knew that it's not healthy for me to be like, you know, we're shooting the breeze here and there's someone cut up in bits and pieces over there.
Yeah.
You know, someone's walked in with a coffee, you're having a laugh and a joke, and it's like, you have to do that because the reality is it's a very heavy environment.
Yeah.
But there's also part of us that shouldn't be that comfortable with it.
No, and it reminds me of things like was the Kobe Bryant like dying and like the cops sharing images of the helicopter crash scene, things like that, and you just think how, you know, people treating that like as normal, like entertainment, like social media, and completely desensitized. And you think, you often hear about cases like that, I think, and somebody who's, say, you know, been working in the police and in a certain department like that for so many years that you become completely desensitized. Imagine doing that for decades and decades. I mean, I had a friend when I worked at Virgin Atlantic, and I always remember meeting him at the first time, because you're always like, oh yeah, what did you know, where are you from? What did you used to do? How did you get here? And he was an undertaker, and it was always one hell of a conversation opener for all of the hosties and the flight attendants. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it's not normal to meet, you know, someone that does that. It's just not. And especially like, you know, I was 17. So I was, if I'm honest, I was around a lot more horrific stuff than you would see in films like Saw before I was legally allowed to go and watch a film in the cinema. Like, you know, that's quite a lot to process. And I think I'm very thankful for the time that I had within this job, because it was probably one of the only jobs where I felt like I felt like I got more from the job than it just taken from me. You know what I mean? So,
and I'm guessing you know, most people's perception is that you know, you would see dead bodies, but people, you know, live a long and healthy life, and all the bodies you're seeing are old. But I'm sure that's not the case. You literally see people from all walks of life, from kids through to middle years, through to old age, and in all sorts of different states.
I mean, one of the most grounding moments, I guess there was two of them. One, when was it? One was in Canterbury, up there, because there was various different shops. So the company I worked for was Dove's Undertakers, and there was various different shops. You'd go to different areas, and when you would go to, like, you know, like move people around, you know, bodies and stuff, you would end up going to certain like mortuaries. So when you'd go in, you'd see certain people in there, and there was a girl, she'd worked in Tesco's. She just randomly just dropped down, you know, dead from an aneurysm. I think she was only like 17, 18.
Wow. And
in the same place, there was a family in there as well. And they was on holiday, and, you know, and the mortality of things is you go on holiday to enjoy yourself. You go away, you wake up today hoping to have a beautiful day, but for some people that doesn't happen. And it reminds you of, like, you know, time is just borrowed. It's never to be kept, you know. And those moments where, you know, go in to see a whole family there, like 4, There were
Wow.
two little ones, mother and father. It just makes you think, like, you got to make it count.
Yeah.
For whatever it's worth, you get one good bite of the apple. And again, this is why this job for me will always remain as something that follows me for the rest of my life, because the grounding experience that I got in terms of just appreciation of life.
Yeah.
I don't think seeing stuff on the news, you can appreciate this stuff on the news, but you're not there.
Yeah.
But when you're there and you see things and you sense things and you smell things, because obviously there's all that
Yeah.
other gross stuff that comes with that environment, it does make you think, like, you know what? Like, you got to be thankful for today.
It's interesting in that literally just yesterday when I picked up my eldest from school, who's 16, nearly 17, and she said an organisation had come into the school, and they showed them a video of somebody drinking and driving, having a car crash, somebody dying, and then they said literally they heard these wheels turning, and they all looked around, and this lady had come into the room in a wheelchair, and she was like, that was my son. And nothing had prepared them for this assembly, that they had to start the day on a Tuesday at 9 a.m. And she said we were all literally like shocked. Then she goes, somebody else then came in and told a story of how their mother had died, and she said she literally just, as she was telling the story, welled up with tears, turned around, walked out the room, and they saw her literally walking out the road. And then another one, I just thought, wow, okay. I don't remember having anything like that in school myself, but and I was trying to explain to her that there are so many more cars on the road these days than when I was growing up 30, 40 years ago. And I said, back in your nan's day, there was no such thing as seatbelts. There was no cots for babies to go in, all this kind of thing. But the volume of cars on the road is so much more. And I just thought, well, it's pretty hard hitting. And she was pretty shocked. But you think, well, if that got the message to her, and her conclusion was like, don't even have one drink. Like she goes, and she made the reference with her phoning our home and going, Mum, can you pick me up? And my wife going, no, sorry, we've had a dinner party, we've had a couple of drinks. Oh, come on, that won't matter, just come and pick me up. And she was like, now I know not to say that. And I was like, okay, so you're growing up, you're learning.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? Because it's a social thing, and I get it. And, it's good to be social, and no one wants to be the odd one out. But, you don't want to be, you're better off being 40 years late on that side than arriving 40 years early.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And again, using the environment that I worked in, I saw that.
Yeah,
but do you know what? One of the weirdest / humbling level of awarenesses that I got in that job was one time I just come in, you move around, you drop people off and stuff. Went in, there was all this shopping in the back room, and I was like, "What's all this shopping?" Like, it was like there was a load of shopping, like milk still cold, all this stuff, and this guy had just walked across the road, like just up the road in the local town. Just dropped down. I think he was 34.
Whoa.
And the fact is that, like, we plan our life. We have such a plan for the future. We want to go do all this shit. We want to go fucking here, go there. But we don't really know how much time is left in the hourglass, right?
No.
So someone thinks they've got like 50 years, 20 years, 30 years left, might not even have 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So what that did is that reminded me, like, again, time is borrowed. It has to be valued. And if, for example, coming back to the drinking, if a drink takes precedent over someone's life, or not just your life, because you might do something that affects now someone else. And in which case you might now have to live with the fact of the guilt and the anxieties that come with, being that person that did something like that.
Yeah.
There was again, I had so much experience in such a year of working in this job. There was a family that, a local traveller family, where they had, the dad was a car garage salesman, right? So we had all these cars, and he'd give his son a car, like really nice, really flash car. Like back in the days, it was been about 15k. So we're going back 2002-ish, about 15k for that time. It was a Mitsubishi fast thing, I think. And anyway, he gave his son this car. He wasn't able to drive, but it was like a present for when he could actually pass his license and drive. And I think the son just took it out on the road, him and his friends, scurfing about. Lives were extinguished very early. And the thing is in this world, we have to remember, it's not us, it's the ones we leave behind.
Yeah.
And to see the devastation of this family, you know, with all the love that they had for their son, for all the love that they had for their sons, because there was multiple people that were killed. You have to remember again, it's like, you know, the value of everything, the people that we leave, the people that we love, you know, cherish everything.
Yeah.
You know, like if that's a message I can give in my work, it's very much like, you know, in my film work, I work in a lot of light and dark like material. But one of the things that I always try to find within that material is always an essence of grounding light to keep things connected spiritually in some way.
Yeah.
And I think like probably the more we get into, more we're talking, you'll probably, when we get into other things, you'll hear where this has such an effect from probably this one job. Because it sort of really planted a wonderful seed that I can use for perspective.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I was going to literally mention that word. The perspective must have given you must be really interesting and really grounding. Yeah.
Yeah, because you now have like a sense of empathy in a different way. Because again, you could look at the growth side of the job, but then you've got the other side of it when you're going to families, loved ones, and you're doing these things and you're going into care homes and you're realizing that there's people that are still present in these care homes. I think one of the hardest days I had ever working in that job was actually going to a care home, you know, because you're going in and you're picking up somebody's friend, loved one, people who've built a relationship or rapport with this individual. You know, obviously you have no emotional connection to it, but if you're someone who's got a heart and you have empathy and you feel things with people, when you see other people reacting to the person you're taking away, that's, you know, that's a lot.
Yeah.
So again, it's always the people that we leave behind. And I think we've got to make sure that I never want to shut a door to anybody that I love without them questioning, does he actually love me? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think one of the things my daughter brought home from that as well was that actually the decision you make of whose car to get into, because I think the majority of cases, you know, it's not going to be you, let's hope, drink driving. It's actually just being with a crowd of people, getting in a car with them.
Yeah.
You know, what do you think of? I wasn't going to talk so long about this subject, but
That's
I find it really interesting. What do you think about? Because I was having this conversation with my family at the weekend, with my mum and my brother, with these, getting your DNA tested. When we're talking about, you don't know if you've got 20 minutes, 20 years, 70 years left on this planet, and it will test you for different diseases and let you know whether you've got, you know, these genes that are predisposed to giving you different cancers, other diseases that might be. Because I had that done, funnily enough, after interviewing a guest whose company was a DNA testing company, and they actually, as an interesting aside, pivoted during the pandemic, and they actually ended up being the company that tested all of the Premier League footballers, all the cricket players, all the rugby players, everyone coming in at the airports. Their literally turnover went from like $1 million a year to like tens and tens of millions just because of the COVID and being chosen. But behind that was the fact that they got me to test my DNA, and I'm fine on all the things that it gave, but it threw up some really interesting things, like where your DNA is from. Like it showed me that my DNA is like 1% African. There's like Southeast Asian in there.
What?
It's crazy.
Brother from another mother. I like it.
And my mum was like, I don't believe any of this. And I'm like, Mum, this is like the foremost company in the world that does this DNA testing, that, you know, swabs the inside of your cheek, sends it away for test. She wouldn't have any of it, you know. But what do you think about that, about knowing if you had a certain amount of time left? Would you want to know?
So I'm very much like, I'm a bit of a bull, not in a china shop, but a bull going towards the goal. I'll just put my head down and go for it. There's things in this life I believe, yes, you should know. But there's also things I think you just shouldn't. Like, okay, could my DNA be predisposed to some illness later on in life? Possibly. But I don't want to watch the clock
No.
from the very moment I'm now aware that there's now a thing. Because now that means that now into this formality of life, I've now got to clock watch, and I'm going to be living on so-called borrowed time, potentially getting to this point in time in life.
Yeah.
I think that there's things that are good to know. I would say one should aim to be, healthy in as many aspects as possible, physically, mentally, spiritually as well. But then beyond that, if we're going to start looking at like, oh, well, our DNA structure is like this, and this, we now got to start analysing, okay, well, what food are we eating?
Yeah.
What packaging is this coming from? Like, because if we're going to look at that, you now got to go, okay, well, what can I take accountability for to alleviate some of this, So like, I might be partial to a nice burger and chips from time to time, something really nice, something quite scrumptious, fish and chips down the seafront, why bloody not? But then I also have to go, okay, cool, well, I need to go to the gym today. I'm going to spend some time in the sauna today. I'm going to fast for a few hours today. Like, so today is a good example. It's like, nearly 20 to 5. And, I've not eaten today. So like, I had a couple of days of nice food, but then I have a few days of fasting. But because I'm taking some accountability for it. Now, I think for some people who really need to know all information around all things, I get it. But I would definitely encourage people to not just focus on like that part of the only aspect is because like, there's people that have lived with terminal cancer for many, many years.
True.
Never had chemo because you find that like it's not actually the cancer that kills them, it's the chemo. That suppresses the immune system that allows the cancer to then spread to lymph nodes and then beyond that.
Yeah, good point.
And part of our bodies, the body is a miraculous machine. Like a lot of people don't give the body enough credit for how much like this world is trying to kill us. We wake up daily, all the toxins in the air, food, drink, all the stuff that's there is set to sort of start poisoning your body, but your body has a way of just dealing with it.
Very resilient.
Yeah, we have cells of cancer in our body. Everyone would have had it, but your body goes in and zeroes in and takes out the cancerous cells. But if you can do things to help alleviate even more so the risk. Okay, so there's some studies on going into the sauna, for like extended periods of time, 20, 30 minutes, a few times, cold plunging. Stuff like this can help, the blood and the antioxidation of things within the body. Like if you could do certain things to help, I'd say do that. I'd say if you really want to know, maybe ask. But also at the same time, it's like, I don't know. I don't want to live life worrying about how much time I've got left.
No.
I want to enjoy the time that I got.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And it would pre-frame every question you ever had, whether you actually started a relationship with somebody, you started a business. What's the point? I've only got... It's an interesting one, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like, my granddad, he passed on from leukemia. And one of the things with him that we as the family didn't want them to give him a time limit because of the type of person he was. He didn't manage too well with certain things. So when the doctors told him, oh, you got like a couple of months to live, like you got to remember, like, it's when you're not the one affected by it, it's one thing, but when you're the person, oh right, you've got now 2 months.
You count every day, wouldn't you?
Okay.
Yeah.
You're literally watching the time, and when for example you're in a job and you're 9 to 5 in, and you're like, right, oh God, it's 4:30. That last hour drags on like it's like 20 hours.
Yeah, true.
So imagine now, this is your expiration of time. You're just thinking, oh, I might go to bed tonight and not wake up. Because these are probably going to be thoughts that are going to play in your mind a little bit.
Yeah.
So now you've got to ask yourself, is that worry maybe inducing even more problem towards the end where you might have had longer just not knowing.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I know there'll be people that would disagree with me on this, but you know, for me, I'm very much like I'm fine. I don't need to know. I just want to live the best life that I can, as healthy as possible while I can.
Yeah, and I'm the same. I'm the same. You mentioned a minute ago about being like a bull charging towards a goal. Tell me a little bit then how you transitioned into wrestling and what was the goal there? What did you think you could achieve by getting into a sport like wrestling?
I thought, you know what? I thought wrestling would give me the ticket out.
Right.
You know, the way out.
And out from?
Out from mediocrity, I'd say. Life. The normal shit.
Yeah.
The stuff that school tells you are. The stuff that the world tries to convince you that you are. I found from a young age, I was always drawn to knowing more about myself than I think, you know, we've got the head side of ourselves, we've got the body side of ourselves, and the spiritual side of ourselves. The spiritual side will always know more, will always know what's right, but the head side of ourselves tells us and rationalizes out of situations that you should be in, and your head will convince you to not do that, to zig rather than zag, and you end up going, if I trusted my intuition, I would have got where I wanted to go.
So many times.
You know,
I totally resonate with that.
So because I struggled in school, because I didn't do well in certain areas, I found I had to be somebody that would do. Because if nobody saw my potential, because that's basically my experience in school, you know, it's not the same for everyone. Oh, Leroy's in the class, back of the class. Yeah, okay, cool. Detention, you know, because you're seen as disruptive back in them days.
Yeah.
Whereas disruptive behaviour now would be on probably the spectrum of dyslexia and autism.
Correct. Yeah.
You know, like I didn't learn I had dyslexia until I was like in my mid-20s.
Well, I was going to say, when did you find out? Yeah,
Mid-20s.
Yeah.
And the autistic side of my nature, I didn't know that until I was like in my 30s, mid-30s. And do you know where it come from? I was doing part-time. I was a doorman in a nightclub. And this one girl who works in mental health worked with people with autism and high-functioning traits like this. She come up to me and was like, Leroy, quick question. I need to ask you something. I was like, yeah, of course. What's up? She's like, are you on the spectrum? I'm like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean? Like, she's like, yeah, you just do a lot of things that are very similar to this. What's this? High function autism. I'm like, okay, cool. She's like, yeah, you do things like this. You stay up late. Your sleep patterns back to front. You probably get on with this type of person rather than this one. She sort of summarised my personality or aspects of it without me necessarily realising there was anything to it. So I was like, okay. So I was like, let me research this thing. I literally saw things that there was stuff that was there that I'm like, I hadn't told anybody this stuff. Like random things, sensations, sound, effects, you know, when you lock into a subject matter, you obsess about it, you have info dumping as a thing, all this stuff. I was like, fucking hell, like, this is me. So when I was growing up, because I couldn't take, you know, segueing back to the question, when I was growing up, I couldn't take to stuff so well in the class. You know, I was always the last one filling out the old projector when you used to have the paper to project.
I remember that. Yeah.
You know, I remember them days. I mean, obviously they don't have that now, but showing my age. But basically, like, because I couldn't do that, I would always find the thing that just put a little glint in my eye. So I found that I wanted to be a basketball player when I was 12. I did okay at that. Got into National League under 15s. And then under 17s, I got into National League as well. But I lost the passion for it. And the new passion was wrestling.
Right.
And really weirdly, I believe that in life we are pushed and pulled in different ways, and we're nudged spiritually to the things that are for us, right? And again, when your head side of yourself tries to convince you it's not right, you have to start analysing other things and go, is this purposeful for me? So I went to my friend's house, I was 15, And I'd rung up English Sports Council a few times. I'm trying to look for a professional wrestling school.
Right. Okay.
I've not even voiced this into the world
Yeah.
that I want to go to a professional wrestling school. I've just looked for one. I went to my friend's house in a place called Ditton, and weirdly, right next door to this guy's house, there's a wrestling ring in this van, like an actual wrestling ring, ropes, the whole thing. And I'm like, that's really cool. Oh, mate, who's your neighbour? It's like, oh yeah, Leroy, this is Brian Manelli. He's a wrestling guy. He does wrestling shows. I'm like, introduce me to him. And then literally, I got into wrestling at the age of 15. I pursued that career for a long while and obsessed about it. Like that was my thing, man. Like that was where I wanted to be, you know, on the stage, WWE style, the whole 9 yards and all that. And I think because when you don't have a lot of people around you that expect anything from you, you start to have a certain symbolic ideology around certain archetypes of characters and people, the ones that would stand up to people in, you know, a time of need, or the one that would say no to the boss, or the one that would say, I'm going to kick your ass. And I think wrestling was that form of escapism for me as well. It was a big form of that. So no, that was my my early years of starting out in wrestling, and yeah, had a good time doing that.
And you got to the stage where you're talking to the WWE. You actually were in the ring at SmackDown, one of the SmackDown events as well.
Yeah. That was
you got up there.
I got up there, and you know, talking to the aspect of the show, screw it, just do it. That was a moment. Screw it or just do it moment. So I'd been on the circuit as a wrestler for probably what was I was about 26 at the time. So I'd been wrestling for a good number of years, and I just started getting a bit like, there's got to be fucking more to it than this. Like there's got to be more. Like again, what I started finding was that I'd got to a stage where I was too good to quit, but I didn't love it enough to stay in it. Right?
That's interesting.
So I'd had a bit of a hiatus, like probably for about 8 months. I'd not been in the ring. And I'm like, right, if I'm going to do it, if I'm really going to like stick at this fucking career and make something of it, where do I want to be? WWE. I was like, right, okay, cool. So I've gone out to the States a few years prior, done loads of training out there, trained with a few good people, a guy called Chris Benoit, William Regal, a guy called Dave Taylor, had a good stable of scope for the game. And I was like, right, it's time to step up now. I want to go WWE. Right, what was the note that I remember from when I was like 5 years before this point that I remember these guys telling me? If you want to go there, get your boots, get your clothes, and just show up at a show. Just knock the door. And I was like, fuck it. That's what I'm doing. So I got myself a whole new load of ring attire. I went to the O2 Arena, knocked the door. But basically, if I remember rightly, I didn't knock the door. A guy had just walked in. The door was open, and I sneaked in. So I'm sneaking in, and I'm walking around the back at the O2 Arena, and I'm like, fucking hell. Like, I hope someone doesn't actually properly confront me, because I know I shouldn't be back here. And I'm like, right, you got this. You're a wrestler. You got your clothes. You just want to be seen. And I literally walked up to it was like one of the road agents stopped me. He's like, oh, sorry, mate, where are you going? And I was like, oh, my name's Leroy Kincaide. Just want to let you know, obviously I'm not supposed to be here. I'm a wrestler. I had a nice top on so they could see that, I wasn't a tiny guy.
Yeah.
And he looked at us and was like, all right. And then pulled me into this back room. I was like, I literally just blagged my way in to the backstage in the nobody at the time. It's totally different now, because there's more access for wrestlers than there was back then in 2008. But now I went round there, had the whole thing, got in the ring on SmackDown. That that particular day, and it's still
way.
to this day it's on the WWE network.
Is it?
Yeah, still now.
Amazing.
I mean, that's off the bucket list, so I'm happy.
Yeah.
I'm happy I ticked that off.
Yeah, and do you, you must get asked this all the time, but any regrets from that period? You said it was like a screw it, just do it moment. You could have gone one way or the other, like sliding doors.
Do you know what? I think if I'd be honest, the it wouldn't be a regret because it was a time of life where my experience wasn't where it is now. I think my problem was I was still caught in the mindset of I hope somebody sees me for my talent rather than me putting myself on.
Right.
And I think like this is one of our problems in life, that we do the most damage to ourselves because we're not the ones positioning ourselves ready to get the good opportunity. We're hoping somebody else sees us for who we are to give us the opportunity. And I think my whole wrestling career, if I'm honest, right up until the point where I stopped, I pretty much was somebody. I was talented. I definitely know I could have been better in ways. Like you can always improve. But at the standard of the time of what I was doing, I was in very good company of, people that went on to work for WWE just after, my career stopped. But I think it was like if I look back now and I had more accountability for myself, like how I think now, I probably would have positioned myself in a much better light to have got further. But I'm very pleased that it didn't work out.
Yeah. Okay.
But actually, like I don't have that regret. I'm like,
that's good.
I'm pleased that it didn't work out.
And given that you're in the business of making movies now, how much of wrestling is like a movie? You have tension, you have drama, you've got action. How much of it is scripted? There's characters that are developed.
It's exactly the same.
Right.
It's exactly the same.
Interesting.
You have a wrestling match. The goal of the match is you have a good guy, you have a bad guy. You have a typical Hollywood film. You have a good guy, you have a bad guy, or a good girl and a bad girl, like whoever it is. And the idea is to tell a constructed match that gives you the ability to be able to tell a story within the match itself. You don't just go to your high spots straight away. The goal is to tell a story that builds to the high spots, where the high spot has like impact. It allows the audience to be there with you. So probably the best era of this sort of storytelling is like in the 80s, Hulk Hogan and Ultimate Warrior.
So that's what I remember growing up. Yeah.
Those sorts of like
The Undertaker.
Yeah. Well, do you remember there was that period where it was like who could slam Yokozuna? I don't know if you remember that. It was like early 90s.
Yeah, no, I do.
Like it was such a big thing where it was like, ooh, bang, okay, cool. That was an entire like segment of weeks and months to lead up to like a slam.
Yeah.
And that's how integral storytelling is to the sport and the art of professional wrestling. Like I have so much respect for wrestlers and for the blood, sweat, equity that goes into becoming a pro wrestler, because I think a lot of people shun it and go, oh, it's fake. But the reality is it takes a lot of hours to get to the level of skill. Not anybody can just handle getting thrown on the floor, because it's not natural to be thrown around and into stuff. But also there's the discipline of being able to show up when you're not good and develop when you're not where you want to be. And then you keep going and going and going. So the discipline that goes into it is the same as any other sport. And I'd say they're probably among some of the probably fittest athletes in the world, believe it or not, pro wrestlers.
And do you think that discipline that you've got, you're able to take some of those lessons into the next stage of your life as a film director, as a businessman, etc.? Yeah.
So a lot of my earlier days when I was when I was developing the skills to become a wrestler, you would go into a scenario where you would have like a 5-hour training session, and you would spend the first 3 hours basically break falls and doing what's known as shoot wrestling. It's a bit like gecko style Roman wrestling. So you would just do mat work, and that's basically it. And what the idea was it was to prepare everybody to be able to actually go into a match, and if somebody tried to take a liberty with you, you would be able to control the flow of it, because you've actually got skill to wrestle. So what that discipline built into my character as a person and how I see the work that I do, in terms of I show up whether I want to or not. If there's a day I don't feel like it, the reality is it's not going to change if I don't do it. So I need to do it. So in my writing, in my directing, and anything like in the creative field, like my goal is now to make sure that I maintain a level of disciplined action towards said result. And then that means showing up day in, day out. And it is from that wrestling period of time where I had weeks and weeks and months and years of training, it just helps give you a solid base to launch from. Because the art, like for example, the art of writing is about rewriting. So you'll write 90-page script, 100-page script, whatever. Then the work really begins. You might be plotting out and doing bits and pieces, depending on the story, up until several months prior. Then you get to your full 90 pages, which takes you could take a couple of weeks, could take a couple of months again. So you've got 6 months investment to that point, if not more, depending on how long it takes. And then beyond that, the next thing is you've now got to go back into it, and you now got to deconstruct it with analytical eyes that are not judgmental based on your own bias. So what you've almost got to be able to do is you've got to be able to build and then deconstruct. And it's the same thing with, if I look back in the wrestling thing, it was like the only way you got better was being able to become aware of where your weaknesses were, know where your strengths are, develop those even more if you can. What weaknesses are relevant, keep them, develop on them. If not, if it's irrelevant, pass it on. Don't waste too much time on it.
Yeah, I'm the same. And I think that's really key for whatever you want to do in life is the first thing, which is the turning up bit. Even if you might not feel like doing it, that if you don't do it, it ain't going to move you closer to your goal. So you might as well do it anyway.
Absolutely. And I think it's so easy to give ourselves a get out of jail free card,
100%. Yeah.
And we're just like, I'll put it off for tomorrow. We'll wait till. And I'll never forget. I met this guy at the gym, right? I think I was 20. I was still wrestling. I was about 24, 25. He was a life coach guy. I've had random people throughout my life that have planted a few seeds and they're here for a moment and then gone the next. And I remember this guy. He was telling me about when you're trying to go for something, what are you doing to take action towards that goal? I was like, oh, well, I'm doing this. I've got this planned. He's like, no, but what are you doing? What are you doing daily? If you set yourself up to do one task a day towards your goal, towards your ambition, towards your drive, whatever you're doing, one thing a day, and stick to it, keep going, before you know it, it will just be all you're doing. Yeah. And I remember when he told me that, I was like, fucking hell, that's a lot. And I remember playing this weird mind game with myself in the moment of him telling me this is what you need to do. But I wasn't sure how to, I guess, interpret what he was trying to say, even though it was really basic what he was saying, just do something every day. Yeah. But believe it or not, that can become quite difficult if you're not willing to accept you've got to let go of a lot of the carnality and a lot of the BS that the world paints for you. Because you now got to accept the fact that you are the person you are now as a result of the actions you've taken. Yeah. Which also means good and bad. So if there's things you don't have that you want and you need to get them, well then therefore there's something you've not done at this point in time. But the good thing with a level of awareness and what it does to you is it gives you the perspective to go, I'm aware that I'm in the prison, so I can free myself from it. But if you're not aware and you just work on default.
Yeah. And therein lies the struggle, doesn't it? And that is very true, to remind yourself of that situation you now find yourself in is the result of the actions or inactions that you've taken. And that can be illuminating, depressing, depending on...
I mean, look, it's a lot, right? Because if you think about it, it's not for everybody to take accountability. It just ain't. It's like, how do you accept the fact that, if you're somebody who's you're brought up in a certain family system where the belief system is very much, money doesn't grow on trees. I'll go up the garden and dig a clod up to get some money. the relationship with oneself is where we have to start. You know, it's all good being able to paint a picture for everyone else and go, it's their fault, it's this, it's that. But I think we have to bring it back to us first and then build from there, because we're the only people who can affect any fucking result that we want in our life. Like, you know, no one else can do that.
Agreed.
You know, you can get the best out of your life if you decide to get the best out of your life. But some people do have more hurdles to climb, definitely, than others.
Yeah.
And I get that. But if you know where the key is life is very much like, if you imagine you have a GPS system, but let's say you've got it internally. We've naturally got a GPS system built and ingrained in us. If you are, you're blindfolded, we paint a scenario, I'll blindfold you, I'll drop you somewhere in this world, anywhere. Could be absolutely anywhere. But the problem is your GPS doesn't know right at that point where you are, where you're located. You could be bloody anywhere and you'd have no idea which way's north or south. You'd have no idea how to navigate. This is where for me, the most important place for me to start when I started my journey of growth and ascension and stuff was there. I had to know that there is something about my life in this moment that wasn't working, that's not right. The perspective, the ideology, the belief system wasn't working. So this map that we've got inside of us, we secretly know that it's not right. Weirdly, we have an instinct of looking in the mirror and we know that something's not right. So what are we going to do to change it? That's really the crux of everything. You know, any level of success, we have to then first take accountability at the first point in moment there. And then after that, things can get easier. But the issue is that the world tries to convince you that your perspective isn't right because you're overthinking or you're this or that. And especially if your support system around you isn't one that's allowing you to flourish and grow, it gets quite difficult if we live in a world now where we care for likes, we care for merit off of everybody else rather than our own merit. So you won't make decisions because you're relying on everyone else to give you the decision to be made for you.
And it's the worst, isn't it? Yeah, to make those decisions based on other people's perception of who we are and what we are, whereas it should 100% come from within, and we should, as difficult as it is, block out the noise. I was with a friend of mine earlier here, and he was saying he's not on social media at all, and I was like, wow, that must be a blessing in many ways, because you know what it's like, if you're trying to promote anything, be that a podcast, a movie, a wrestling match, you need to be on all channels where there are groups of people that you would like to know about said event.
Yeah,
it's a tough one.
It is, and unfortunately, the more technology is speeding the world up, the more omnipresent we are everywhere. The reality is we have to plug in more, and by plugging in, there's part of you that can't tune in. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like when I'm in my creative zone, I do sort of go on, I don't want to say like a social media blackout, but I will go on time to time, but I don't want to be thinking about posts.
No.
I don't want to be thinking about building this social presence of something else up versus what do I need to do now? Like, I'm in a writing zone.
Yeah,
I don't go out, I don't socialise, I don't do that. I focus on what I need to do because this is my said task at hand. But I get it because, if you're not on social media, if you're not doing the thing that will continue to get you like out there, it's like, do you even have a life?
Yeah.
Do you exist?
Yeah.
Are you even here right now if you haven't done things? And I think the key is like, it is maintaining a sense of presence in your own life first, and then you can do that other stuff. But it is a fine balance because I think it's very easy to tilt the tables a little bit too much into the instant gratification side of what social media does.
That's the phrase. Yeah.
And then before you know it, you're not being productive.
No.
You're then unproductive. I do believe in what I call productive procrastination. I think you can procrastinate in a way that can be productive, but you have to see it in a different way. So what I mean by this is like I have certain areas of my creative mindset where I have what's called sponge mode. And in this sponge mode, I sort of basically open myself up and I'm like, anything and everything I want to be influenced by, to know what I reject and what I accept. Sometimes by doing that, so I can go, YouTube's a good one, like, because there can be all sorts of stories and different things that you can just draw creatively from. You know, even like interactions like this, there can be moments in people's personality that you're just like, wow, that's such an interesting quirk you've got there. It's almost like personality jacking. But the fact is like, you've got to be open to receive enough, but also you have to allow yourself the time to breathe in that moment. But knowing that it's got to be a temporary, it's not permanent. Because if you're not careful and you keep that behavior of procrastination permanent, you'll go through several weeks and you realize you haven't done nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And then you're like,
total
deadline.
inaction.
Yeah.
And look, we've mentioned movies a few times without getting into it. So tell me, how did you segue from wrestling into the film industry? Had you always had a passion for the film industry as a kid, as whilst you were wrestling? How did that develop?
Weirdly, I'm gonna say, like, I believe I was chosen, weirdly, to write. I couldn't really articulate any different than that for that, because, you know, in school I was in special needs, right, and I was in special needs specifically for English. So I was in a separate class, away from all the other kids, in English, specifically English. Why this is really, really, really important to me is because I believe very much like in a message, and that can be a spiritual message, it could be a God message, however people want to interpret it. I look at it like we all have a calling innately in us all, right? Everybody is called. You know, some people say some people are called. No, everybody's called. Very few answer the phone when they're called, right? Now, you have to be aware at the time to accept what is going to be yours. So this is where my writing stuff comes from, right? So I went through school, terrible at English, terrible at reading. I'm not even good now at reading aloud, but I can read. But I have to take it at my pace. So it's the way I would learn, right? But for some weird reason, back in 2010, 2011, I started having a drive to want to write. And I couldn't tell you why. It's literally like, oh, I'm going to write a story today. It was literally sort of like that. And I was like, oh. And I found what it did is it ignited part of the side of my nature that was alight when I was a kid.
Yes, okay.
And it reminded me of it. And I was like, let me explore this. And I kept writing and kept writing and kept writing. And I literally had, I don't want to say, it wasn't an obsession. It was an addiction. Like, it was an absolute addiction to finding words on a page and just keep going. And it's so 180 to who I was from years previous, right?
Yeah.
Now, obviously, the first few things you write are not good. You know, skills and that need to be built in, so you start developing beyond that. But long story short, basically, as I went on, I just realised that, like, isn't it weird how the weakest of your abilities can ultimately become your strongest of your abilities, should you allow yourself the room to accept it? Part of my thing was I was trying to run away from that, weirdly, because I was like,
that's not me.
I'm like, you know, I'm the wrestler, you know, I get in there, I know, do you know what? Oh, I'm going to do a bit of acting, I do a bit of that. I want to be on the screen. Like, that's my thing. Like, I can write this bit because I write to do that because I want to be in it. And that's basically what it was doing. It was ego fueling the passion. But there was that little voice just in there going, you do know you're going to be more behind the camera than in front of it. And it was there the whole fucking way through this journey, man.
Was that?
Dude, and it's like, we all have this little inner voice. And we all try and shut it out. But no matter how much you try and stop listening, it just gets louder and louder and louder. And to the point of where if you ignore it long enough, this voice changes from a voice of encouragement to one that starts giving you fuel energy of regret, because now the time is gone, but the voice is, this is what you could have been. You know, and I very much believe we have to listen to that inner voice because it knows. But with the noise, with social media, with everything, with life, with validation, we shut it out too easy. And for me, I feel very blessed and thankful that, like, I just chose to just accept it. I was like, right, okay, cool. Let's see where we go. And here we are now, you know, as a result. And things are still growing and growing as a result of it.
It's funny, like when you hear people trying something like meditation and say, I just can't get it. I just can't get it. I just can't get rid of these voices in my head. And it's like, you're not meant to get rid of the voices in your head. You just accept the voices, go with the flow and kind of absorb it. You know, you don't try and fight against those voices.
Yeah, but you should embrace it.
Yeah, agree.
Because, you know, like when people are like, I'm not really creative. Oh, people are not creative. Everybody is creative. The problem is we're conditioned in school to stop being creative, stop daydreaming, pay attention.
Yeah.
You're not focused on the classwork. You're not focused on this. Get back to the class. Detention after school. You're punished for being somebody who's, let's say, spectrum. Spectrum children just think a little different. It's a bit unconventional to what's normal for most people. Most people will go 1, 2, 3, 4. People that might be a bit more on the spectrum might go 1, 2, 4, 8, 1 back there, and actually the route is quicker, but it's not for everybody that's logical. Because the creative side of the brain is an illogical thing, you know, because I think when you bring logic into creative, you start to put it in a box. And creativity is not box material. It's, where does it come from? And I think these voices that are in us when we're children, you know, because, you know, I'm thankful going through a not good schooling process, because it meant that I didn't shut the voice off. So I just did. I just did martial arts. I just did wrestling. I just did basketball. I just had an ability to excel at things that I was really passionate about, like to good levels, you know, like, you know, it's a hard one to articulate, but the simple thing is just embrace the voice.
It's interesting, the creative. I mean, we're recording this at the biggest creative community in Europe here at Tile Yard, actually. I always remember a few years ago, a friend of mine interviewing me for his podcast, and it was a podcast on creativity, and he asked me about creativity. I was like, why are you asking me? I'm not creative. And he was like, no, we're asking you because you're really creative. You've got a podcast, you interview people, you put together the whole show. And I was just like that. Oh yeah, I guess I am. I never thought I was creative. He's like, no, dude, you're 100% creative. And like you say, everybody's creative in one way, shape or form. It's just working out how you express that creativity in so many different ways, obviously. Writing, filming, audio, painting, whatever it is.
I think the thing that stops a lot of people embracing themselves is self-judgment. I think self-judgment stops you deciding what you can do, because we're putting full stops where God puts a comma. You know, you shouldn't be I forgot the bloody word now. What's that word? I've lost it.
There you come.
Right. You shouldn't be somebody that can do more than one thing.
Yep.
Why? Why could you not adapt? It's all about perspective, because I believe very much like perspective is one of these things which can free you from the ability of being able to like just fit the mold for everybody else. So if you take time to allow yourself freedom from within, freedom to think, feel, act and be present, you'll find that your creative spark will just shoot up. So the idea is like, you know, you ever try to water the garden and there's a kink in the hose? Well, you won't get the water out.
Yeah.
So what you do is you make sure there's no kinks in the hose. We technically are putting kinks inside of our mental hose that stop the connection to the purity of where your creative genius lies. Now, not everybody is going to be able to pick up a pen and just write the story or build the podcast or make a film. But there will be some genius in us all. But we've got to step out of our own bloody way and find it.
That's so often the way, getting out of your own way. But when you're down in the weeds, you don't have perspective again to actually have that overview and kind of step back from it and actually see the path from A to B. And like you said, it's a zig and a zag. It's not a straight line, but it's perspective.
Yeah. And sorry, just come back to me. Multi-hyphenate. That's what I meant to say.
There you go. Knew it'd come back.
It just like evaporated out of my head for that moment. I was like, what's going on here? Leroy, you're on it.
And look, when you started writing that became an addiction, at what point in that journey did you have a vision that you would ultimately make a feature film? And how'd you get to that point? You make short films, you make videos, music videos, was there a vision? Did it come along the way? Was there always a vision?
No.
There wasn't?
No. Like the film side of my creative endeavor now in life is probably the thing that, I'll be honest, I didn't decide to do it. This is why I say, like, it's so
kind of chose
it's
you.
so weird because it's not like I'm like one of those kids that's like, oh, I've gone to film school, I've done all this, I've done all that. I'll be honest, back in the time when I would have wanted to go film school, I wouldn't have been able to afford it. It would have been just too expensive for my background, from where I come from. But as time goes on, sometimes, again, it's better you don't know. Because sometimes if you know how much you got to sweat and bleed into what you're doing, you wouldn't do it.
You'd never do it.
So,
Agreed.
like, when I look back, like, from when I was wrestling, right, and that was my focus. Had somebody told me, Leroy, in another number of years, you're going to be writing feature films. I mean, the thought of sitting down writing A4 pages, dude, that would have scared the living daylights out of me. I wouldn't have wanted to do it back when I was a wrestler.
Yeah.
Had somebody said, oh, you're going to basically start looking to build a company and go into a market and start being a businessman around how you're going to navigate with your career, with your ideas, and building your business. If someone had told me that, I would have laughed. It would have been the furthest away from anything anybody could have told me. And we're not talking like a long, long time ago. You're talking in the last decade, a lot of this has happened. But in the last 5 years, I think the closer to the calling that you get, it's like a snowball effect. Once you push it, there's a natural state of perpetual motion that goes behind the snowball, right?
Yeah, momentum.
And then it picks up the momentum, and before you know it, it's at like that terminal velocity going down. Things amplify the closer you get. And I'm in this, what I call an amplification mode at the moment. Like the next stages for my career are getting much more closer. Spiritual ties were lost, and in a way it freed me more. So like, blessing and a curse in that, but ultimately, like, everything's moving, I believe, according to God's plan for my life. So I'm just here for the ride. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I do. And you can feel yourself getting closer, yeah?
Yeah, I can. I can now. A few months ago, and this is how spiritual shifts work. They can work very quick. They're like quantum shifts, like paradigm shifts. And when the change comes, you're very aware when it comes, because it comes in usually a shock, be whatever it is. Could be instant momentum behind the project. All of a sudden there's money when there wasn't money, or all of a sudden a great deal of pain and suffering has to go in for you to become wiser and more aware. I just went through a spiritual cleansing of sorts in that way, and it was probably the most traumatizing thing I've ever experienced in my life, but it leveled me in a different way.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. I know you were going to say something.
Yeah. You set yourself up for that one.
Yeah, I did actually. Yeah, it's like, okay, now you started on this list, Leroy. Yeah, so basically, like in my life, you know, we all have in all of our lives a person or persons that ground us, right? They're the one that would support you no matter what. They're always there, be it your mum, your dad, grandparents, or whatever. I was just more closer to my grandparents. You know, lost my granddad some years ago, about 20 plus years ago. But a few months ago, on the 1st of August, I woke up and found my nan. And that was, for me, she was probably, she was like the, you know, like you have the tree for Christmas and you have the little angel at the top of it. Bam. It's like the centerpiece of the tree. She was sort of that in my life, you know, but in a way where it was like we had just had this like connection that just grounded me really, really solely to stuff. The problem sometimes with, you know, I'm really glad we're here so far from the first. Well, I say so far from the 1st of August because had I been here a few months ago, I'd probably been in a state of tears. But from what I lost and what I realised in the loss was the truth of one, unconditional love. Like, you never really know how much you love someone until they're not here. And you appreciate different things. But you also never know the blessing and the curse in the loss. It's a juxtaposition between light and dark. You will come out of the flames like a phoenix from the ashes, but you need to be broken and burnt first. This weirdly is part of my next stage in the journey of my life, is that like my spiritual, I believe we've all got spiritual ties on this earth. There could be one or two people, but usually there's one person. When they go, it's a death that you can't experience again because you've only usually got one of these, I believe. You can be connected to loads of people, but there'll be one. If you had a choice, you could lose that person and get everything you want. You would never be able to make this choice. So therefore, the choice is made for you.
Yeah.
And when it is, you have to learn, one, a new way to love, but you have to also learn a new way of navigating your life now. Because now that safety of that person being there, of that person that would, regardless of how good it was, regardless of how bad it was, would always give you that support. Now they're somewhere else. This spiritual death weirdly has allowed me a lot more room to be free in a way that I didn't. It took a couple of months. I mean, you know, I heal very fast in different ways. Still tons of pain there, but the thing is that anybody that loves you would always want the best for you.
Yeah.
So you should always keep that in mind, regardless of whatever you're doing. So my thing was like, okay, what would be the best that she would want? She'd want me to blow the fucking doors off.
Yeah.
Like, that would be it.
Yeah.
That's exactly what she would want. So in honour of everything I do moving forwards, there's a sense of urgency now. There's a sense of like not giving a fuck anymore now.
Yeah.
There's like, like when people say it's like there's like a part of their mind they wish they could turn off.
Yeah.
When they care so much about what other people think. Weirdly, this was the fight. I mean, I was pretty much like this anyway, but her loss, her leaving my life, me now having to reflect on the beauty of things that we've done before, really has given me, well, the only way's up now.
Yeah.
So I just don't.
No consequences.
Well,
Yeah.
With love and respect, not infringing on the rights and
Yeah.
or anything of
Yeah.
anyone else on the journey up.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a very interesting few months, and it was one of the hardest, if not the hardest day of my life. So there was a pitch I had to do the very day I found her.
Was there?
Yeah, that was.
And who was that pitch to then? To
So we over the last couple of years, as where we're stepping into the business side of the film industry, you realise that there's the passion side of it, where you want to tell the story and be passionate about it. But then you've got the business side. And the business side has to come before the passion, because the business is what fuels the passion. So we've been going through like a few programs. We've gone through Creative England's, they have like an Evolve program where they basically get companies ready for financial investment.
Yep.
So we went on this whole course all of last year, got through the end of the course, finished it early this year, gone through a few angel investor groups, and we had our first official proper pitch to investors.
Got it.
On the 1st of August.
Wow.
At 12 p.m, I had the pitch. At 8:15 a.m, I found my nan. And it was like, what do you do? Well, it's not what do you do. It was like, I didn't, to be fair, I didn't know what was right. But all I knew was like, the thing that I had that got me through it was, in my head, I knew if it was a choice of my nan telling me what to do or what not to do, she'd want me to do it.
And also, do you think this is just another hurdle that's been put in front of me that I need to get through?
I mean, like, it's a weird dichotomy between the passion that you have for something and how much you really want something. I tell you, a physical injury is nothing like losing that person in your life. It's nothing like it.
Right.
When, I tore my bicep a couple of years ago doing some door work, and randomly, when that injury was terrible, it was hard, recovery's the thing, you've got to get over that, but ultimately, it's not the same. The mental pain that you go through when you lose that person, you now have to test yourself. And I remember thinking to myself, well, this is going to be the test of tests, Leroy. You're going to sink or you're going to swim. Which is it? And I remember thinking this to myself, because I almost didn't tell my partner when we was about to have the pitch. I almost didn't say.
And you're pitching together?
We were pitching together.
Yeah, okay.
Because I was like, what I didn't want is I didn't want the, I'm really sorry, all of this other stuff that goes with that, because I knew I had to really almost mentally block it out for about 4 or 5 hours, of about 4 hours before. Obviously, we had done the pitch, had a successful pitch, which was really...
That was going to be my next question.
Which is really like, it really fucking, like, this day really fucking sucked, because it was like, we needed people to believe in us. We needed someone to believe in us, like, whatever. We're complete strangers talking across a Zoom call for investment into what we're about to do. People don't know us from Adam, but they've been entrusted enough that they're going to be put in front of people that potentially have some opportunity for them to want to invest. So this is the first point we've ever had this, and so it's the first time we've done a proper pitch like that outside of any group. We're outside of the Creative England thing. And here we are, just after the call, just after the pitch, we get an email from one of the guys, said, really successful pitch. One of the guys would like to invest. We're still on our round raising for funds, but the fact is, the very first investor in my life ever came on the day that I lost my nan.
Yeah.
And that it was a tough day, but for what it's worth, I think you have to be tested.
Yeah, agreed. Sounds like you were sorely tested.
That got me that. But, I'm still here and we're still moving on, and, with her blessing, now she's somewhere better. I can shine the way that she would want me to. Do you know what I mean?
100%. And is that for a new project that you've got, that you're raising the funding, because you did your first feature film, bootstrapped it, and were incredibly successful with it?
Yeah, so we did the first film, literally, again, screw it, just do it moment. We was like, well, if nobody's going to believe in our idea, then we got to believe in it. So if we're going to believe in it, wholeheartedly, you need to get the result that's going to need. What's that? Okay, well, do what's needed and get it done. So did the film, very, very pleased that we did it. We had a lot of people, I say a lot of people, but there was a few people in and around certain circles that were very much like, yeah, but, maybe do you not think you should, try this and maybe not that and blah, 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 and hurdle, hurdle, hurdle. And before you know it, you'll be chasing your tail without taking action or pulling the trigger on anything. Because you'll just be second guessing and doubting, because one of the things in certain industries, you need feedback. You need to know what's right, what's wrong. But also, beyond knowing what's right and what's wrong, you've also got to know how to pull the fucking trigger sometimes and stop over-analysing everything and just fail your way forward. If it doesn't work, then fine. But try it and fucking give it hell for trying. There was certain circles that said, oh, no, maybe you're trying to do too much. You're trying to all this, that and the other. And the multi-hyphenate thing is really important to me, because it's like, what's too much for someone else might not be too much for me for how I see things, because giving in mind perspectives.
Yeah.
So with perspectives in mind and growth in mind, someone can't see the thing that I would see. And rightfully so. Because it's like, if you've got an artist that's painting a picture, Michelangelo's painting a massive thing, the guy in the Sistine Chapel doing his bits and bobs, how do you know until the result is there what is in the mind of that creative? And I think this is what this for me is really important, because it's like sometimes you just have to do it without permission, regardless of what anyone says, and then you find the result at the end. So coming back, sorry, I had to go into that there. Coming back to basically what you were saying, like we did the film went out, it's released on Hulu, it's on Amazon. We're currently having a showcase out in Cambodia. It's currently playing out there in a theatre. So it's like, it's doing things. It got picked up by Samuel Goldwyn, and it's like,
Saw that, yeah.
There's always more we can do. And you should always want to get better and bigger than the last time. And that's exactly where I'm at. But the fact is, we got that out. Now where we're at as a company, we've been developing a slate of films. So not just one film, a slate of films that we got 4 feature film scripts that are getting budgeted and stuff now. So that into the first quarter of next year, when we're looking for investment, we're open to one of two ways of investment, either into the individual projects, or if there's people that are more long-term sighted in terms of the company and the ethos, then and they really believe in what we're about, then they can join us on that journey as well. Because I think, like, again, belief has to be tested and for it to be manifest in yourself, right? So unless you put your hard blood, sweat, equity into something, no one's going to know what you're capable of. And that's where, for me, Nocturnal Pictures is the embodiment of, to this point now, we've gone this far with all that we've done with like 0 capital given to us. Like, this has all just been from grassroots building. So now the next leg, the next trajectory of our careers as Nocturnal Pictures, I'm very excited about that, because it's like, with the investment, with all these other things going in, what's possible?
Indeed. I think I know the answer to this question, which is the last question I'll ask you, given what you've told me so far. But are you currently where you want to be?
No.
I knew that was going to be the answer.
No. And it's a no and yes. I'm very happy to be the way that I'm at this precise moment in time. But there's always more.
100%.
There is always more. And for me, it's making sure that I'm happy and not content. And that is, if I can carry this from here to the grave, I never want to be content. Happy, yes. Content, no.
Yeah.
Because content is a place where you don't strive for anything else but what you got.
No, I'm with you. I think happy and fulfilled but not content.
Absolutely.
Leroy Kincaide, thank you very much.
Thanks for watching this episode of Screw It, Just Do It. Let me know what you thought of it in the comments below this video. Has this episode helped move you closer to where you want to be? All that I ask is that if you enjoyed this episode and that it's moved you closer to getting to where you want to be, that you share this episode so that it helps one other person do just the same. Just ask yourself what small action will move you forward to get you from where you are, then screw it and just do it. Until next time.